Hello and welcome to another episode of Words with Myself.
Many of us have stopped experimenting. Instead, we try to do things the right way. We try to learn from others. We follow guides or watch videos. We tend to strive to get it right the first time. Many of us feel embarrassed when we get things wrong, when we don't get it on the first go. We feel like we should be able to do things, and the things that we can't do, we say, well, we can't do them. We don't say that we're not currently able to do something. We say we can't do it. We are ruling it out as a possibility. This isn't always because we are motivated by fear. It can even be for good reasons. We might have higher stakes on what we're trying to do, and it begins to cost us money if we make mistakes. It affects others if we make mistakes. And as adults, the repercussions of making mistakes is normally far greater than when you're a child. You have responsibilities, you need to make money, you have things that you need to do and provide. And all of this begins to compound and compress. It begins to make experimentation a lot more difficult. We tend to believe that we don't have the time to waste. We have to do it the right way the first time. Or we have to know what we're doing before we do something. We can't simply, mess around or play about. But that is exactly how you learn things. The best way to learn something is to play around, to experiment, to try and figure out what you're doing wrong and adjust, rather than just learning from a taught process to actually go through the motions of figuring something out. That is why children learn so much quicker than adults do. Is because that's how they learn things. They experiment and they try and they get it wrong and they try again. And many of us don't go through that anymore. When was the last time you tried to do something and couldn't do it and then kept at it until you were successful? The chances are that isn't going to be a common experience for an adult. And some people dislike that uncomfortable feeling of not being good at something and having to learn something new so much that they end up doing the same things their entire life. They have found a subset of things that they are both interested at and can do, and they don't have to go through that uncomfortable feeling of learning something new or going through the process of figuring something out for the first time and going through that uncomfortable process. And for people who kind of get into this groove and get into this comfortable spot, they end up feeling like they have lost their ability to learn things. They lose all their potential and just have what is. They only see themselves as skilled as they are, and that is as skilled as they will ever be. Not willing, they believe, not able to change things in their life or expose themselves to new experiences. And it does simply become a case of the things I can do and the things I can't do. The list of things that I'm going to try to do almost disappears after a while. And that doesn't mean that it is gone. It just means that people's confidence in their own ability to pick up something new or to do something that they don't have any experience in or that they're not confident in has been dramatically eroded by their lack of practice. They simply don't do new uncomfortable things anymore. So they believe that they can't, that they are unable to learn something new, when in fact everyone is capable and we can all learn and we can all get into that mode of experimentation. We can let ourselves play with things and learn. Martial arts is a fantastic example because in most people's experience of a martial arts gym or a boxing gym or an MMA gym, they think it's super duper serious. And that's how people learn. It's really aggressive, rough training, but that's not the best way to learn. And the people that often do that and learn in that way are the least effective. And the people that learn the best and are the most skilled are the people that can do it and have fun and play. There is a time for seriousness and intensity, but for the bulk of the work, when learning things, when trying something new, that's not competition where, you're doing things that you are very well versed in. This is learning new skills and ingraining new skills and techniques. The best way to do that is through play and experimentation, finding out what works and what doesn't work. And in a non-serious manner, in a way where you can make a mistake and there be no consequences. Nothing terrible is going to happen. You're just going to realize that you've made a mistake and improve and adapt. But some people can't even do that with themselves. When they're trying to learn something new, they're getting incredibly frustrated with themselves, and they're angry and they're calling themselves stupid and names and going through all that in their head, and basically being the worst teacher ever to themselves, beating themselves up over every little mistake. And it becomes far less enjoyable to learn something. And because that's most people's experience of learning things, they want to avoid it. They don't want to learn something because learning something has always come with this condition of punishment or consequences. And that is not a sustainable or conducive environment for learning. It's actually the opposite. The environment should be playful and encourage mistakes. And you could take an extreme example, something like a brain surgeon, where you'd be like, well, you can't be playful and be a brain surgeon. You can't learn in a way that, it has to be very precise, very strict, very harsh. And that process of learning that has to be the same. But it doesn't. And you're no better at doing the thing than you are when you're relaxed. So if you're stressed during your entire learning process, when you go to do it and you're calling upon what you have learned, you have also learned to be stressed while doing it. And you then have to unlearn after learning how to be relaxed. Whereas if you practice and learn in a way that is still trying to go after the goal, still trying to be successful in what we're doing, not to be reckless or absent-minded, but doing it without the fear or the pressure or the consequences. And I know the argument for not doing this. The argument is that things should be done in a serious way to learn what the stakes are early, so that when you're learning, you are experiencing the same level of stakes, because you don't want it to be a shock when let's say you were a brain surgeon and you were practicing and being all playful on like this jelly brain that you're operating on, and then you go straight onto a patient. There is going to be this discrepancy between the experiences because obviously the stakes are much higher. But even still, you can add that pressure stimulus in later. You can, raise the stakes, but you can do it gradually, so that when you're first learning, like just learning the muscle motion of the cut and how to be precise and get it on the line every time, like that whole process, it doesn't have to be serious. No part of that has to be serious. If learning by playing means that you have learned in an unserious way, but you can cut the perfect line every time, what's the difference? You can introduce like testing and making sure that it's perfect every time, but if you've learned to do it in a way that is enjoyable and relaxed, it doesn't matter. You've learned the skill. The skill is what is important. How you feel is not really that important or relevant to the job. It just matters that you can do the job to a high degree of accuracy. And most of us aren't training to be brain surgeons. Yet we're still giving ourselves this hard time with everything that we do, blaming ourselves for mistakes, criticizing every little thing that we do, and putting all that pressure and being horrible to ourselves over our inability to get something right first time. Because if we don't do this, what happens is we become obsessed with result. We get obsessed with some criteria that is not real. Success is always changing. How we view success is always changing. And success to one person is completely different to success to another person. And even to yourself, your idea of success when you were younger is probably not your idea of success now. And any time we surpass a milestone of success, we always set another goal. There's always more criteria. There's never an amount of money where we're going to go, yeah, we're successful and we're rich, and that's it. There's always going to be something else. Yeah, but I'm not as successful as X, or I'm not as successful as I want to be, or I still can't do this. There's going to be other things to compare it to. So to become obsessed with success is to become obsessed with something ephemeral, something that doesn't really exist and we can't define it, and it's always changing. So our obsession is over something that we can't really even define. It's no surprise that we all feel like failures all the time because we can't even define what not being a failure looks like. If you are going to set your mind and your path on getting better and doing things and being successful, and that's kind of how you want to experience life, it is far better to focus your attention on obsessing over progress, getting 1% better every day. The person who dedicates their practice towards incremental progress is going to outperform the person who is chasing after success every time. For the person that is obsessed with progress, their goal is clear every day. It's just better than yesterday, or a bit better than last time. The person who is obsessed with success, their goal is vague. They don't really know how to define what a successful day is, even in the grand scheme of a greater success. The only criteria they really have to go on is, am I successful yet? Do I feel successful yet? And that answer is likely always going to be no. So by focusing on success and the result, we're actually reducing the odds of it happening. So let go of that control. Let go of that idea of forcing your will, forcing the result, forcing the world to accommodate your dreams. And instead, put your focus and intention on becoming the best version of yourself. That's the only success criteria that matters. Are you improving on you? That's all that matters. Everything else is ephemeral. It doesn't matter. We can't control the outcome or the result. All we can control is what we do every day, here and now. Thank you for listening.